Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. 3 or 4 locations under consideration. US President Donald Trump says he's close to announcing the venue for his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. As for the date, November is being eyed after the US midterms. Reaching out to the world, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is going to relay a message from Kim Jong-un to Pope Francis after the North Korean leader said he wanted to invite the pontiff to North Korea. Plus, the annual parliamentary audit season gets underway. Over 750 government bodies will be inspected, with rival parties expected to clash over inter-Korean relations and the government's economic policies. Let's kick things off with the latest diplomacy between North Korea and the United States. US President Donald Trump says the second North Korea-U.S. summit will take place after the midterm elections on November 6th. Now, Reuters reported the development on Tuesday as President Trump spoke to traveling press on board Air Force One while flying to Iowa for a political rally. Trump said he can't just leave now, and the summit will happen after the midterms. And as a follow-up to that, President Trump says 3 or 4 locations are being considered for his upcoming summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He said the list does not include Singapore, the site for their first summit in June. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Speaking at the White House on Tuesday, President Trump discussed possible locations for the highly anticipated second summit between himself and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. But among the possible locations, Singapore probably isn't going to be one of them.
Well, it is happening, and we're setting that up right now. That was part of the reason that Mike was going over to meet. They're setting up the meeting, and we'll be announcing that probably a different location. Singapore was fantastic, but we'll probably do a different location.
When asked whether his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida could be a possible location, the U.S. leaders say it might be.
He'd probably like that. I'd like that too. I think it would be good, but we'll see. We're talking about 3 or 4 different locations. Timing won't be too far away.
President Trump also boasted of his very good relationship with Chairman Kim and cited the recent lack of nuclear and missile tests as a sign of progress in the denuclearization process. He added he believes North Korea will be incredibly economically successful if it denuclearizes. Critics, however, say there's no evidence that the North has started to abandon its nuclear program. But North Korea argues it demolished a nuclear testing site in May, has plans to permanently shut down a missile engine testing site, and would also shut its main nuclear complex in Yongbyon if the U.S. takes corresponding steps. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told reporters at the White House on Tuesday that he made real progress on his 4-nation Asia swing that took him through Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and China. Pompeo said that while there's still much work to be done, Washington can now see a path where they will achieve the ultimate goal of the full and verified denuclearization of North Korea. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in will head to Europe for a 9-day trip on this Saturday. He will be visiting France and Italy from October 13th to the 18th to discuss ways to foster their already friendly relations. On the 17th and 18th, President Moon will visit the Vatican to reconfirm its blessing and support in bringing peace and stability to the Korean Peninsula and discuss further cooperation, and more on that in just a moment. The South Korean leader will then travel to Brussels for the Asia-Europe meeting and hold a bilateral summit with the President of the European Council. The final stop is Denmark for the P4G Copenhagen Summit 2018, where President Moon will speak on green growth cooperation. So the big question on many people's lips at the moment is, Could Pope Francis visit North Korea sometime in the near future? It seems increasingly likely after the North Korean leader signaled that he wants to invite the Pope to the north. President Moon Jae-in is expected to deliver Kim's message to Pope Francis when they meet at the Vatican next week. Our presidential office correspondent Shin Se-min with the details.
President Moon Jae-in, set to depart on a five-nation trip to Europe this weekend, will also make a stop at the Vatican for a meeting with Pope Francis. The top office says the president will be conveying a message from his North Korean counterpart on possibly inviting the Pope to Pyongyang.
President Moon will relay a message of invitation to Pope Francis from the North Korean leader that he will passionately welcome the Pope should he visit the capital Pyongyang.
And such an invitation from the North dates back to the Inter-Korean summit in the North Korean capital last month. President Moon reportedly made the proposal to Kim Jong-un on meeting with Pope Francis, who has consistently shown a strong interest in establishing peace in the region. The presidential office also disclosed an encounter between one of the South Korean delegation to Pyeongchang summit, Archbishop His Highness Kim Hee-jung, and the leader Kim. The visiting Archbishop reportedly told the North Korean leader that he would relay to the Vatican that the two Koreas are working in the direction of reconciliation and peace, to which Kim Jong-un responded by asking him to send the message. If the Pope does accept the invitation, it would be the first time that the head of the Roman Catholic Church has ever visited the North. Perhaps on a mission to help North Korea make connections with the world while bringing peace to the Korean peninsula, President Moon will be sitting down with Pope Francis at the Vatican during his stay there from October 17th to 18th. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, back here in South Korea, the annual parliamentary audit, the season for that gets underway from today. Over the next 20 days, around 3 weeks, over 750 government bodies will be out for inspection, with rival parties expected to exchange some barbs over a wide range of issues, including inter-Korean relations as well as the government's economic policies. Our political correspondent Kim Min-ji with this report.
The National Assembly kicks off its annual audit of government ministries and their affiliated agencies starting Wednesday. For the next 3 weeks, 14 parliamentary committees will inspect more than 750 government bodies, while the House Steering Committee, Intelligence Committee, and the Family Committee will follow with their own audits in early November. Although it's a second audit under the Moon Jae-in administration, it's technically the first to focus on the current administration, since last year it was only 5 months into the job. The ruling party is expected to highlight what the Moon Jae-in administration achieved during the past year, while the opposition bloc will likely point out the government's missteps. With that said, opposition parties will be ready to criticize the government's signature income-led growth policies, with recent data showing the economy slowing down and job growth lagging. But the ruling party in turn will likely argue that structural issues are the fault of the previous conservative governments, and that now is the time for a change in the economic paradigm. Another hot potato is the ratification of the summit declaration reached between the two Koreas in April. The ruling party will likely say that the ratification is needed to support the peace drive on the Korean peninsula and to ensure that the declaration is upheld even if there is a change in government. But the conservatives have been firm in saying that significant progress towards denuclearization must come first. Other topics likely to be hotly contested include the government's drive for deregulation, measures to curb the rise in property prices, as well as the controversy surrounding the leak of confidential government documents by an opposition lawmaker. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, has announced she will be stepping down from her post at the end of 2018. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our No Adam. So, Adam, this is another high-profile departure from the Trump administration.
That's right, Mark. The announcement was made on Tuesday as Haley sat beside President Trump in the Oval Office. There was a cordial exchange. The president thanked the UN envoy for her work.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me. She's done an incredible job. She's a fantastic person, very importantly, but she also is somebody that gets it.
Haley did not provide any specific reasons as to why she was stepping down, but stressed it was time for a change. She also dismissed speculation she would be challenging Trump for the White House in 2020.
I think you have to be selfless enough to know when you step aside and allow someone else to do the job. So thank you, Mr. President. It's been an honor of a lifetime. And I will say this, for all of you that are going to ask about 2020, no, I'm not running for 2020. I can promise you what I'll be doing is campaigning for this one. So I look forward to supporting the president in the next election.
The former South Carolina governor has been the face of Trump's America First policy at the UN, steering the U.S. withdrawal from several UN programs and defending Washington's hardline policies against several countries, including North Korea, Iran, Syria and China. But there have also been times when she has distanced herself from the president. The timing of Tuesday's announcement has raised some questions about her real intentions, especially with only a month left until the important midterm elections. Meanwhile, President Trump says he will be speaking to Saudi officials about the disappearance of a Saudi journalist. Turkish officials claimed Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist and vocal critic of Saudi Arabia's leadership, was murdered as he entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office on Tuesday, Trump said he did not know anything about the reports, but that he will be speaking to Riyadh officials.
Mr. President, have you spoken to the Saudis about the missing Washington Post columnist?
I have not. No, I haven't. But I will be at some point.
What do you know at this point?
I know nothing right now. I know what everybody else knows, nothing.
The Saudi government has denied the accusations of murder, saying Khashoggi left the consulate, but his fiancée, who was waiting outside, said he never did. Meanwhile, Turkish authorities said Riyadh has agreed to a search at its Istanbul consulate. Hurricane Michael is gaining strength as it makes its way towards the Florida coast. The Category 3 storm is expected to make landfall by Wednesday afternoon local time. It is packing near 200 km/h winds and threatening dangerous storm surges and flash flooding. Alabama, Florida and Georgia have all declared states of emergency. Hundreds of thousands of people face evacuation orders along the East Coast, covering Panhandle and Big Bend. President Trump declared a state of emergency for the entire state of Florida, freeing up federal assistance. Officials have described the storm as monstrous and the most powerful hurricane to strike the mainland U.S. so far this year.
Now, the International Monetary Fund has lowered its 2018 economic growth forecast for South Korea from 3% to 2.8%. In its World Economic Outlook report, the IMF also pulled down its outlook for the nation's economic growth rate next year to 2.6%, down 0.3% from its original forecast. The world economic growth rates for this year and next were also lowered by 0.2% due to trade conflicts and risks from unstable financial markets in emerging countries. The IMF advised countries to expand their financial resources and base their monetary policy on their own individual circumstances. South Korea's finance chief has promised to mobilize every possible means to create jobs and boost regional economies that are struggling with slumping business. Meeting on Tuesday with the administrative chiefs of 9 regions in the emergency response zones, Kim-Dong-yeon said the government will support projects aimed at revitalizing regional economies and creating jobs without having to be tied to the existing policy framework. In May, the government designated Ulsan, Goje, Mokpo and several other regions as emergency response zones to receive special job support and tax incentives. Some of the regions have higher unemployment rates than the national average, contributing to the nation's worst job conditions since the global financial crisis. Now, the malnutrition problem in North Korea is still extremely serious, with around 4 in 10 people in the north not getting enough food to see them through the day. In a bid to combat the issue, the UN's humanitarian agencies are providing food aid for children and women, but gathering the required funding is unfortunately proving rather difficult. Yoon Jong-min with this report.
The World Food Program says some 40% of North Korea's population, around 10 million people, are suffering from malnutrition. The United Nations Food Agency provides fortified cereals and enriched biscuits to 650,000 women and children each month, but says it may have to cut its charity program due to a lack of funding. The agency says some donors and companies have been reluctant to fund aid programs for North Korea, even though humanitarian support is excluded from sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council for the regime's nuclear and ballistic missile tests. A number of countries, including France, Switzerland, and Sweden, are participating in the program. The U.S., the WFP's biggest donor, does not support food aid for North Korea at the present time. The WFP says $52 million is needed this year alone to tackle malnutrition in North Korea. Meanwhile, Radio Free Asia reported Tuesday that the UN Children's Fund provided nutrition aid and vaccinations for 1.3 million children in North Korea in the first half of the year. In a report released by the agency, it said it conducted checkups on more than 1 million children in the north and has been taking care of undernourished children, providing them with vitamin A supplements and other nourishment. UNICEF also appealed for more financial aid to help support children in need in the north. Yoon Jong-min, Arirang News.
Now, the president of the 2018 Pyeongchang Organizing Committee said the organization saw profits from the Winter Olympic Games, reporting to an International Olympic Committee session in Buenos Aires on Tuesday, this Korea time. The Organizing Committee President, Lee Hee-bom, said the last Winter Olympics in February was successful thanks to the support from the South Korean government, the International Olympics Committee, active donations and corporate sponsorship as well. He noted his organization will use the surplus to establish a foundation to advance sport and offer idle facilities as training venues for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Any surplus from the Games is usually divided between the IOC, the Organizing Committee and the host National Olympic Committee. South Korea is set to launch a locally developed rocket in 2021, in a few years from now. And as part of that preparation, it's going to be testing a booster engine that will be part of the rocket. This test launch of this engine will be happening in the coming weeks. Jo Sung-min reports.
The Korea Aerospace Research Institute revealed a new rocket booster engine slated to be test launched in October. The unveiled engine is nearly 26 meters high and 3 meters wide, and it has been designed to take up more than half the total length of a domestic-built carrier rocket, dubbed Nuri. Nuri is a 3-stage rocket developed entirely with homegrown technology, and it will serve to launch a 1.5-ton satellite into the Earth's orbit in 2021. Researchers say the primary mission of the upcoming test is to inspect the engine's performance level.
We're looking at shooting a 75-ton engine into outer space. That means we want to first and foremost check out the engine power, because that is one of the factors that determines whether a rocket launch is successful or not.
According to the team, the booster has fully combusted for 154 seconds in an engine test conducted in July. That is more than 10 seconds longer than what the team considers as a successful run. Industry experts say once the test launch succeeds, the result could benefit several fields related to space engineering.
When the test turns out successful, we expect the booster technology to be particularly helpful in the military department.
The booster engine is set to be launched on October 25th from the NATO Space Center in Gyeong, Jeollanam-do Province, And if the test is successful, a total of 5 booster engines will be used in the first and second stage to thrust out Nuri in 2021. 조성민, Arirang News.
Now, in health-related news, the options for treating atopic dermatitis are limited and can have potentially severe side effects. However, now researchers here in South Korea have developed a way to treat the condition safely using DNA nanoparticles. Park Se-young with more.
Atopic dermatitis, the most common form of eczema, is caused by imbalances in the immune system. Because there's no fundamental treatment for it, doctors usually prescribe steroids to reduce inflammation. But these steroids can have side effects, so they are not suitable for extended periods of use. Now, Korean researchers have developed a way to treat atopic dermatitis using DNA nanoparticles. They created nano-sized egg-shaped DNA that can be absorbed by the skin and induce an immune response, which reduces inflammation and helps balance immune functions.
When the X-shaped DNA was applied, the inflammation-inducing Th2 cytokines were reduced and Th1 cytokines were activated to strengthen immunity.
When the DNA nanoparticles were applied to mice with severe atopic dermatitis every day for 3 weeks, their symptoms were reduced to normal.
It can be applied to the skin and it did not show side effects or toxicity during animal testing. Since we have domestic and foreign patents, there are possibilities for commercialization.
The DNA nanoparticles can also be used as an ingredient of functional cosmetics. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. Overnight showers will bring chillier air starting this afternoon. Highs will drop to the mid-teens. And from tomorrow, we'll see lows dropping into the single digits. And it's going to be brighter than yesterday with highs ranging from 15 to 21 degrees Celsius across the nation. Seoul will only get up to 15 degrees. Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 19 and 18 degrees respectively. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So most regions in South Korea are expecting some drop in temperatures starting this afternoon, while parts of North Korea will also have a breezy and possibly rainy Wednesday. Beijing is already seeing chilly conditions, while both lows and highs are still in the 20s over in Tokyo. Sydney will have a mix of rain and clouds for the remainder of the week and into the weekend. Hurricane Michael is forecast to dump up to foot of rain, that's nearly 30 centimeters, over Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. States still recovering from the severe flooding from Hurricane Florence last month. The sun is back in Rio de Janeiro along with hot and humid conditions. Meanwhile, London will bask in unseasonably warm temperatures this week. Lastly, to Africa, most of South Africa should have a cool start to Wednesday with temperatures rising by the afternoon. And that's the weather update for now.
Well, that's pretty much where we're going to leave it for now. But if you want to find more of our news stories, you can do so by going to our website, arirang.com/news. We also have a smartphone application for you to watch us live or video on demand as well if you're out and about and away from a TV. In the meantime, do stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including our next newscast. That's coming up at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half from now with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.